Might make this a new playlist on my YouTube channel. I've done Calgary Flames trade retrospect, where I looked at trades from the past. However, in this video, let's do a Calgary Flames signing retrospect. As you remember, 3 years ago, back in 2017, going into the 2017-18 season, the Calgary Flames, there were a lot of buzz and excitement that the Flames were looking for help on the right wing. And they signed Jaromir Jagr, who at the time was 45 years old. He was not getting any interest around in the NHL because he was 45, pushing 46. Because if he would have played with the Calgary Flames all for the 2017-18 season, he would have been 46, playing still in the NHL. But let's take a look on, do you think, was it worth it? Was it worth the Calgary Flames taking a flyer on Jaromir Jagr? And what could the Calgary Flames could have done differently to maybe had him a little more success, where they could have, he would have still just jumped ahead of Father Time. But that was all the excitement that the Calgary Flames made 3 seasons ago, going into the 2017 season. Pat, we signed Jaromir Jagr. Yeah, it was actually surreal to see Jaromir Jagr play with the Calgary Flames. And you could say he is the, one of the greatest players of all time. I mean, he's second all time in points, only behind Wayne Gretzky. And if he did not play 3 seasons in the KHL when he was in his late 30s, where he still was playing at the top of the game, and if we didn't have 3 lockouts, who knows what Jaromir Jagr's numbers could have been. And he definitely would have easily passed Gordie Howe's games played record in the NHL, and there was thinking that he could have done that with the Calgary Flames. However, it was not meant to be, as it was right after training camp and going into the season that the Calgary Flames did sign Jaromir Jagr. It was a 1-year contract. I think the base salary was $1 million, and I think there were bonuses about games played that he could have potentially got $2 million. I mean, it was just over league minimum. I mean, keep in mind we're talking about future Hall of Famer whenever he decides to retire from hockey completely, that he's in the Hall of Fame. Maybe that will happen in 20 years when he finally decides to retire. I mean, don't knock the guy for being fit, loving the game. I mean, right now he's still playing back home in the Czech Republic in Kladno, the team that he owns. It's a second-tier team in the Czech Republic, but it's still professional hockey, that he's still putting up decent numbers. But the unfortunate thing that we always going to remember with Jaromir Jagr when he played with the Calgary Flames was the initial excitement, realizing he's here, and this was the 9th team that he played for in the NHL, and it was the first time they actually got to play for a Canadian-based team. I'm always going to remember Jaromir Jagr for 2 things. Well, mostly is his time with the Pittsburgh Penguins. That's where he started and had mostly success. I mean, he had a little bit of resurgence with the New York Rangers. That and the mullet, for sure. Because I remember when he was a rookie, and it was back when more guys had mullets. And my dad had longer hair, and I ultimately grew my hair much longer. Yeah, I made my hair video a few months ago, where I was excited to finally get a haircut, because barbershops and salons weren't allowed to be open during the global pandemic. But Jaromir Jagr had a little bit of that mullet as well going when he's with the Calgary Flames, and I figure I have the hair if I wanted to pull it off. And then of course he had the traveling Jagrs, where they actually were based not far from Calgary, and it was exciting to see them crashing the interview with the traveling Jagrs after when we signed him. But all that excitement getting the allure of getting a hockey legend playing with the Calgary Flames. His role was he was only going to be a 3rd-line forward. And I'd say when he did play, I'd say he was still fairly effective at 45, but ultimately it was injuries. He couldn't stay healthy in the lineup. And it was clear that the game passed him by. I mean, it was surreal that at the time when he played for the Calgary Flames, he was on the line with then Mark Jankowski and Sam Bennett. And the crazy thing is, if you combine both of their ages together, it still wouldn't be as old as Jaromir Jagr. And then you don't realize until you see him much closer in person like how tall he is. I mean, he was a really tall, stocky player, and he looked super, super tall with the Calgary Flames, especially when he was playing with Johnny Gaudreau, and he did at least score one goal with the Calgary Flames, and ultimately it was his last goal in the NHL that he was set up by Johnny Gaudreau, and I think he had 3 of his 7 points in that game against the Detroit Red Wings, because ultimately he only played 22 games. With the Calgary Flames, he scored 1 goal, 6 assists for 7 points, and then from there he couldn't stay healthy in the lineup, and then the Flames granted his release. He was put on waivers for any potential other teams to pick him up, and apparently, there was the St. Louis Blues and the Montreal Canadiens were also kicking tires on Jaromir Jagr, and obviously when he was available to the rest of the league and then got picked up and eventually went home to the Czech Republic. That was it for Jaromir Jagr. I mean, it was kind of, exciting, but kind of, I would say, you almost had to kind of feel sorry for him at the same time when he played for the Calgary Flames. I mean, he was excited to be here and play for a Canadian team, and that, I guess he said that was one of his to-do things. But that being said, the fact that it was low risk, high reward, it was still worth it, I found, to get Jaromir Jagr here, even if he only got to, rent him for a couple months, essentially. He was a big influence on the younger players at the time, and it was just cool to see him here in Calgary, wearing Flames gear. Sold a few jerseys. I didn't get a Jagr jersey myself, but maybe I would want to eventually get one just as a collector, realizing that Jaromir Jagr, that great that played for the Pittsburgh Penguins and also the New York Rangers. Sprinkle in some time when he played for the Washington Capitals. He also was a Philadelphia Flyer, as crazy as it was after he got back from the KHL. Yeah, he played for the bad guys in Pennsylvania. And I know he was also a Devil. He was also a Dallas Star. And I think his brief time with the Dallas Stars coming to Calgary also played a role of him wanting to sign him, because he was in the Dallas Stars before he got traded to Jersey. And then eventually he played for Florida. And I'll take a look at some numbers that, the expectations were high, but they weren't really out of line at the same time, because he still put up numbers with the Florida Panthers before they came to Calgary. But he played under Glenn Gulitz, and obviously here in Calgary, the brief time he was here, as well as the Dallas Stars, so I guess he had some familiarity with them. But, it was just, the game eventually, Father Time even caught up with Jaromir Jagr, despite what he says he does, like 1,000 squats a day. And I know that, I think last year, there was a buff picture of him, like, with a rope or something. He was shirtless. And then some people commented and said, hey, he should be back in the NHL. And then I kind of commented, hold it right there. See how this time with the Calgary Flames went. The games passed him by, unfortunately. But, it was still, amazing that he was 45, still playing, at least in the NHL. He was effective when he was able to play when he did. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. But, if you look at his career numbers, overall, he's played over 1,733 games in the NHL. He scored 766 goals in the NHL, on them with the Flames. 1,155 assists for 1,921 points. And then he didn't last with the Calgary Flames to get to the playoffs. We didn't make the playoffs in 2018. But in 208 playoff games, he has 70 goals, 123 assists for 201 points. As well as he has 2 Stanley Cups, but that came in his first 2 seasons in the NHL with the Pittsburgh Penguins, when he was with Mario Lemieux. And speaking of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and he was drafted 5th overall all the way back in 1990. Here's another thing to put in perspective how long he's been in the league. Keith Tkachuk was drafted in the first round of that season. Jaromir Jagr's played long enough to be in the NHL where he was teammates with Matthew Tkachuk, his son, Keith Tkachuk's son. That was just the other thing that was surreal. But, in 27-18, he had only 7 points in 22 games. But the season before, with the Florida Panthers, he played all 82 games. He had 16 goals, 30 assists for 46 points. So he had as many points as his age with the Florida Panthers the season before. And Florida decided to move on from him. And then the season before, in 15-16, he played 79 games. It's almost a full season. He scored 27 goals. 2 seasons removed before he came to the Calgary Flames. And he put up 39 assists for 66 points. So I would think, there was expectation that even if he was playing like 10, 12 minutes a game with the Calgary Flames being a third liner, that it almost seemed like if you based it on those numbers, that if we could have gotten maybe 10 goals and 30 points, obviously be a mentor for the young players, that, it would have been worth it. And I still say it was worth taking a flyer on him then, despite, I don't want to say it was a disaster. It wasn't a total disaster. I mean, it was exciting, but, I guess I also think he was briefly a Bruin as well. I forgot that as well. Another team that you could say be a nice rival with the Pittsburgh Penguins. But, one thing I think the Calgary Flames could have done differently was sign him to either that one-year deal, or at very least, knowing that Jaromir Jagr was not getting much interest. I know there was that meme that it was in the off-season of 2017 that I think he showed a picture that he couldn't get off the phone. Teams were interested in him. And then in 2017, it was a picture of him doing this and seeing nothing on the phone. So, the Flames weren't really in a position, weren't, trying to step over anyone. But I think the Calgary Flames should have at least, keep in mind he was not signed with the team until after training camp, because the Flames were looking at, we'll see who we have in the organization first. I could see that, but I think the Flames should have at least. Maybe it would have not beaten Father Time, but I think the one thing they could have done differently was sign him to either that one-year deal before training camp, or at very least a PTO, professional tryout, so he could get his twirls in with the team, played some games with the preseason, see where he fits, and then the other side of that deal. Or potentially maybe that would have been the other way to maybe get more interest, to potentially play with another team. He was still removed from 46 points the season before, played all 82 games with the Florida Panthers, and then the season before that, 27 goals and 66 points. And then as spectacular as his numbers are, if he didn't spend 3 seasons in the KHL, and if he didn't have 3 lockouts that wiped out equivalent of 2 seasons, Jaromir Jagr would have easily, he would have well been over, 2,100 games. I would say he would have been in the 2,400 point range. And, could we dare say he would have been close to the 894 goals? Just because of longevity. He played with the Avangard Omsk in the KHL from 2008 to 2011 before he came back in the NHL with the Philadelphia Flyers. And then according to Wikipedia, after when he left the Calgary Flames, he was injured. He was initially put on injury reserve, and then he got released and then went back home to Kladno. Well, in the 17-18 part, when he was in Kladno, he played 5 games, he had 4 assists, and then they played in 10 playoff games, and he had nothing. That's the team that he owns, and it's a Czech League 2, it's called. And then in 18-19, he actually played only 4 games. Scored a goal, 3 assists for 4 points, and I believe he had all that in 1 game. And then 19 playoff games, he scored 12 goals, 6 assists for 18 points. And then last season, the 19-20 season, still with Kladno, in 38 games, he scored 15 goals, 14 assists for 29 points. So it's definitely, amazing to see that it's not, pro, but it's pro enough that still registers that, he would be 40, turned 49. I know he did say he wanted to play in the NHL until he was 50. Well, I'm going to say he played only until he was close to 46. Not too shabby enough. I'm going to say whenever he decides to say, I'm done, all is waiting for him. And, it was still neat and cool to see Jaromir Jagr, even though he only played 22 games with the Calgary Flames. I didn't think it was a total disaster, but I think if they would have offered him a contract and he at least got to twirl with the team for training camp and played some preseason games, I think he might would have played at least a few more games to condition himself a little more. I'm not saying it would have beaten Father Time, but I think it would have been a little better when you got it more out of him. But I just say, what do you think of this, looking back on the signing, I guess it was 3 years later? The time when we had Jaromir Jagr, we only had him for 22 games, but, it was neat, surreal at the same time to see Jaromir Jagr playing with the Calgary Flames. And, that's the last team that he played for in the NHL. And whenever he gets into the Hockey Hall of Fame, I would say if he retires in 20 years, you'll see Jagr plaque, at least you'll see the small Calgary Flames I'm always going to remember him more as a Pittsburgh Penguin, and he also had his best days with the New York Rangers. Because I think the 5-6 season after the lockout, I think he actually had 120 points, and that was amazing then. And that was, when he was still in his mid-30s. He got to play in the NHL till his mid-40s. So yeah, just want to say, what do you think of it? Like, could things would have gotten a little better if we would have, not signed him right after training camp, where all he did was skate his own and get in game shape, and then he took a few games before he actually played the Flames, and I think he rushed himself in and then Father Time, which is why he always can stay healthy. And, you could probably say he ultimately held on too long, but it is what it is. Can't knock a guy for still being fit and loving hockey. So anyway, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, home of Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, I mostly talk Calgary sports on my YouTube channel, but if I also do personal vlogs, attempt comedy, and I also do share my experiences, let's say I'm on the road or else for a bit. So if that all sounds like it'd be interesting to watch, do follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey. You know what you need to do, and I also have my other social media links down in the description below for other ways you can follow me. And actually, I made sure I took a picture, at least the back of a Calgary Flames Jaromir Jagr jersey at the Flames Fanatic store, because it was just surreal to see him playing with the Calgary Flames. We had him for at least a few months. He was exciting and neat, but you have to somewhat feel sorry for him at the same time, just because it was clearly the end of the line, and it wasn't necessarily the way he wanted to go out, and didn't get to break Gordie Howe's NHL games played record, but he still had one heck of a career, if you ask me. So as I say, go Flames go, and thanks for the brief memories, Jaromir Jagr, if you happen to watch this, and thanks on a great career that you've played here in North America, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you being inducted in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Just keep that hair long and flowing. That's all I say whenever you get inducted. So as I say, I'll see you in the next video.